rebel scum, and welcome to Rough Start, where we here at Rough Magic Games teach you how to play a different tabletop role playing game every episode. That's right, we run through it so you don't have a rough start. My name is Charlotte, I use she, her pronouns, and I am a professional GM with Rough Magic Games, a collection of many more professional game masters for hire. If you're interested in playing a game with one of our GMs, be sure to check out roughmagicgames.com. If you already know who we are and love what we do, check out our Patreon. The link is in the doobly doo below. I love exploring the wide world of pen and paper role playing games, and tonight, joining me on that journey is.
Hello, I'm Isaac Bates, he, him. Been with Rough Magic since September of 2022. I started my GMing with this game that we're talking about tonight back in 2018. And since then, I've been running about one or two games a week since 2018. So, been around the block, having fun, doing great. But I love the collaborative storytelling is the best part of GMing. Any process, but especially Star Wars, but it's the collaborative storytelling you get with the players. Love working with them and just building things around what they've create.
Amazing. Oh, he's prolific, folks. That's so many games to run. That's fantastic. Before we get into it, just how you doing tonight, Isaac? What's going on? Play any cool games
Uh,
lately?
Doing pretty good. Christmas just happened, so I've got a few new tabletop games I'm trying to brush up on and learn, and
Ooh.
hopefully will be available soon on the Rough Magic website.
That is good stuff. Yes, we are coming at you in the year 2024 now, officially in the new year. But yeah, without any further ado, what game are we talking about tonight, Isaac?
We're talking about Star Wars D6, one of the first, if not the first, Star Wars tabletop role-playing game by Wizards of the Coast way back in the 80s to drum up support and interest for episode 5 and episode 6 so that George Lucas
Yes.
can have enough money to make said movies.
Yes, we are coming at you with a game that is from a long, long time ago in TTRPG history. This is not the most recent edition of Star Wars made by Fantasy Flight. I'm going to give you a little TTRPG history lesson here, real quickly, audience. So this game was originally published by West End Games all the way back in 1987. Um, so imagine, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away,
Yep.
clearly. West End Games has your back on all sorts of Star Wars, TTRPG content. The IP changed hands several times. Wizards of the Coast had it for a little bit, like you said, Isaac.
Hmm.
Fantasy Flight has it now. Um, I believe they went under or lost the IP in about 1999. And even through that, fans of the original Star Wars game have continued to uh, update and release further editions of Star Wars. So this version of the game was published in 2015 and is called Star Wars Re-Up for short, revised, expanded, updated. And that is what we're going to be talking about today.
It's a
Uh,
very alive and active community because if you follow Star Wars in media, about every series or so or new episode, there's sometimes a new gadget or item or force power, and within weeks or sometimes a month or a new ship, someone's made stats for it. So it's very active and alive in the forums, and new every time Star Wars makes something new, the fans just give it stats to this old system. It still works.
I love that. You don't have to wait for the official content to come out.
Right? Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just say, "Oh well, someone already did it. The work is done for me." Um, you obviously have a lot of experience running and playing this game. I want to know why this iteration of Star Wars and not another one. Why not Fantasy Flight? Why not
Sure.
something like Scum and Villainy? What is the draw for you for this version of the game?
Well, that all has to do with back when I lived in Tennessee, where I'm from. My uncle moved close to our family, and he brought with him actually a bunch of these books, the Star Wars Adventure Journals. Um,
Amazing.
and these are journals that got published monthly about Star Wars D6 of like little like they'll have like little written stories of like you can turn them into adventures or have a cool concept for a character or stats for a new thing that came out in a book. Now most of that is like Star Wars Legends, I believe it's called. But he's like, "Hey, do you want to play the Star Wars game?" And I'm like, "Sure." And like he showed me it's pen and paper. That's my first pen and paper TTRPG playing around. I roped a few friends into playing with me, and then life goes on. Had to move away, and um, I was like, "Man, I really want to play again." And as is the case, I'm sure with most Rough Magic GMs, it was like, "Well, I have to run the game if I want to play it," and here
Yeah.
I am. So, um, but I'm very thankful for that hardship because I love running games. Like playing them is great, but I love, like I said before, like the collaborative storytelling. But that's how I got into tabletop role playing games, and especially this one is my uncle literally had all the books and was like, he actually has two copies. He has one for himself, and then he's like, here, just take all these copies with you
Oh, that is
in your
so
journey.
sweet.
So yeah, lots of source material. So yeah.
What a lovely story. It's nostalgic and then also has the
Hmm.
benefit of being a pretty good game, which we'll
Yeah.
get into.
But yeah, this
Oh,
I will say like there is a like conversion for like D&D 5e. There's a conversion for that for like Star Wars, and that works great too. And there's like other ones out there, Rebellion and other things. This one I think has the benefit of um a whole D6. We'll get into it, but like a whole D6 system by itself, I think is an interesting beast in of itself. And also it's not, there's nothing wrong with this, but it's definitely not like the fifth edition Star Wars version. That's not D&D reskinned to be Star Wars. It's like a Star Wars game in itself. So I feel like it has a unique perspective on making it feel very Star Wars like, instead of just sometimes falling into the temptation of just reskin D&D or
for
reskin
sure.
spells. It's like this is from the ground up a different game. So I really
Yeah, and
enjoy it too.
if I remember correctly, before they stopped officially printing this game, they also made like a generic, space opera TTRPG, and
Mhm.
the revised, updated version has elements of that as well. So I feel like it ends up being very robust and like very
Right.
capable of doing a bunch of things within this like, science fantasy space opera kind of
Hmm.
genre.
Definitely.
Hell yeah. Well, this is the part where we normally talk about the lore of the game, but I don't know if we want to dive very deeply into Star Wars lore
So,
tonight on the stream.
a galaxy far, far away.
I think the important thing is, you fight space fascists in Star
Right.
Wars. If you're not familiar out there, audience, with the
Yeah.
Star Wars
Basically
property.
that. It's this was definitely made between I think episode 5 and 6, if not a little bit before episode 5. So it's definitely set in the Rebellion era. Although, like
Hmm.
I said, there's been like official and definitely fan versions of like the Old Republic, the sequel trilogy, the prequel trilogy. That's one thing nice about the system is it can be it can be any era. You can like start in the Clone Wars and end up in the sequel era in a campaign. There's so much to do with it. But yeah, it's really any era. It's ridiculous how many stats there are out there for everything.
Yeah, it turns out the Star Wars timeline is extremely expansive, and this game you could play 10,000 years before the Battle of Yavin if you want. I'm
Right,
not your
yeah.
boss. All right, fantastic. If you came here looking for a lore explanation of Star Wars, sorry, go read Wikipedia or something. We are going to talk about the basic mechanics of Star Wars re-up. Um, in Star Wars, you roll d6s, which is why Isaac called it Star Wars D6. Whoa, crazy. The main equation, basically, for any roll that you're making in this game is you have an attribute and a skill. You add those together, and that's your dice pool of six-sided dice. Yeah, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, Isaac?
Sure. To run this game, all you need is a bunch of regular dice or d6s. If you can, I followed my uncle in his footsteps in taking all the dice from the Monopoly and the Yahtzee games, and then never returning them to play this game around the table. Uh, I will say this system, um, like to compare it to the other system I know really well, 5e of Dungeons and Dragons, you can get like you can only there's a vast of many ways you can play a druid, but at the end of the day, it's a particular class. Whereas with this system and the skills, you can the way it's set up, you can kind of custom make your class and be you're not like as shoehorned into these certain kind of like puzzle pieces. You can kind of like it's more like silly putty. You can make your own puzzle piece. But the game is very simple in that the more dice you roll, the better you are at it. And you, at the very least, you'll be rolling at least one dice, up to 12 dice. Although um, it'd be a very long campaign or very generous GM to be up to a 12, rolling 12 dice at once. But
That seems like
it
a
has
lot.
happened. Yeah.
Yes,
There
because
are
you
certain circumstances, but not usually.
right, because it's a situation where you add all of the numbers together. It's not like you pick the highest out of it.
Right, yeah,
So
it's
those
a pool of
numbers get
dice,
up
and that
there.
gives you numbers. Yeah. Um, a good example is a stormtrooper who actually in this game do not miss a lot. So if you do play this game, please take cover and please buy a energy dampening armor because stormtroopers actually are good in this game. Um, but like for
Dangerous.
example, it says like from 1 to 12, 1 being no skill in it or like no gym gains or anything if it's strength, or very clumsy if it's dexterity. Um, up to 12, 12 is best in the galaxy. Um, 5D is professionally trained, so most stormtroopers have a blaster of 5D. Thugs, like generic thugs on the street, they'll probably have like a 3 or 4D in fighting or shooting. Um, like a good example, a Jawa would have like 1D strength. Um,
Tiny.
And as far as like the game system, it's just the dice, how much you roll or not roll, and the only variation on that is um, there's a +1 or +2 modifier. Just so like some things might be strength of 1d plus 1, 1d plus 2. I think we'll get in that later, but like leveling that up, if you get past a skill is like 5d plus 2, if you level that up again, it just goes to 60. So there is some benefit to having things a little bit lower than because you get a guaranteed couple numbers. But
Yes.
if you have a skill, if you're rolling just one dice, that means you're rolling the wild dice. And the wild dice is a very interesting mechanic for this thing. Instead of rolling a
Ooh.
1 or a 20 on like on a d20 for 5e, um, the dice would is like usually a different colored dice, or like maybe you roll it by yourself if you have like me, you had like just all slightly yellow dice from Yahtzee games. Um, that lets you know if you roll a 1 on that wild dice, that is a something bad may happen, or if you roll a 6, something definitely should good happen. And the fun
Yes.
part about the wild dice is if you roll a 6, you get to roll it again. So if you keep rolling a 6, you keep rolling that dice until you don't roll a 6. If
Yes,
you
the
roll
die
a 1, yeah,
explodes.
yeah, it's like the dice explodes in other systems. If he rolls a 1 after the 6, that doesn't count as a critical failure. It just means it doesn't.
That's a relief.
Yeah, that is a relief. Yes. Um, this game kind of explains. Okay, so as a GM, I feel like in terms of scales, a 1 on the wild dice is not as severe of a bad thing as a 1 on the d20.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah,
we have the example that they have in the book up right now, actually, where like an option for if you roll a one on the wild die is you just add it to the total normally. Like it doesn't
right.
have to be a galaxy shattering thing. Like it can just be like,
Definitely.
okay, well, it wasn't very good, add it to your total. Or, it can cause a complication and make things more difficult.
Right.
But yeah, it's not like a critical failure
Definitely.
necessarily.
Most of the cases, like usually, most the thing you roll the most is like blaster, your skill to shoot, and usually that means like, oh, your blaster jam, so you got to take a turn to like unjam it, and then you're good to go. An example in the movies would be in Episode 6 when Han Solo is trying to hack into the hot wire the doors open on the indoor bunker, and he makes bigger doors close, and it's like, okay, well, Like that's a one on the wild die, and it's a complication because he had to find another way to get inside there. Because like, okay, that's not working, and you can't go back to
Obviously
that.
not
So,
gonna work. Yeah.
yeah. So uh, uh, an example of like a six on the wild die would be anytime a hero like uh Luke maybe like throwing his farming equipment in episode 4 to swing across the chasm with Princess Leia. That would be a good example because like that was like a because like if you watch the shot, like the grapple hook like wraps around a couple of times to make sure it's secure. Um, that also sounds like
Just
the GM be
a
like,
little
no, it's
extra
safe.
oomph.
Go ahead and go across. Like, please escape these stormtroopers, kind of thing.
Yeah, that
Um,
also sounds, and we'll get into this shortly, but that also sounds like maybe he would have used a force point
exactly. Yeah,
to get
yeah.
that done.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
that
So
is.
that's the
Oops,
basics
sorry.
of
Go
it. You're
ahead.
just rolling. Yeah, that's basic. You're just rolling d6s. The more you roll, the better you are at it. But it doesn't mean you can't fail, or doesn't mean you can't surprise even yourself by succeeding if you get enough sixes on the wild die. Um, there are like modifications to that, like situational bonuses. Like if you have equipment, so you get a +2 to hacking with this, and like you can like okay, you roll an extra dice or whatever. But that's covered like in the equipment and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think the next thing would be character points. Now,
Yes, I do wanna. I
yeah,
wanna hop backwards really quickly,
definitely.
and just talk a little bit more about attributes and skills. Um, so the attributes in this game are dexterity, knowledge, mechanical, perception, strength, and technical.
Hmm.
So mechanical and technical are very similar, but a little different as well.
It can be hard to remember, and right now I'm trying to remember the difference.
I think
But
mechanical is more like
yeah,
piloting, and
right.
technical is more like repairing.
Yeah, I guess it's like another way I've tried to remember the difference is mechanical is like the hardware and technical is like the software. That's not
Yeah.
across the board because I believe in technical there's first aid, which is one of the most important skills of just making sure your
Yeah, for
friend
when
gets
that
shot by
stormtrooper
yeah,
actually hits you.
actually hits you, which
Yeah.
will happen, unfortunately. You're gonna want to have a first aid kit and someone who knows how to do first aid. But
Yes.
yeah, dexterity is usually one of the higher skills attributes because that's where blaster, dodge, melee defense is. Strength is also how your hit points. We'll get into like that later, but like there's actually not hit points in this game. There's just are you okay, wounded, dying, or dead kind of thing.
So
And
a
strength,
little easier to die
yeah,
with no hit points.
it's very easy to die in this game, unfortunately. Um, it's easy to get healed, but there's complications with that too. But yeah, so strength
Yeah.
also is like how strong your character. Like I said, a Jawa would have like 1d6 strength or whatever, so very low strength. Also means very low con. So like that also think of strength in this game as like well your strength and also your constitution if we're going by 5e.
Hmm.
Uh, perception is uh is what it is. Sounds like it's like how you can perceive. Think of that as like wisdom. And also perception, your attribute is how you roll initiative. So like you will be you will be when you're asked to roll initiative, you'll roll your perception uh attribute instead of like a separate skill or one that's
Ooh.
dexterity based like in 5e. Knowledge is um well knowledge is basically intelligence in 5e.
Self-explanatory.
Right. It also covers, oddly enough, like under perception, I believe there's persuasion and gambling, but under in knowledge is intimidation and willpower. Willpower is if you ever get into some like spooky stuff, like Call of Cthulhu, there's like sanity. Willpower is kind of that if you run into scary things, but also like if you're resisting like the effects of the force or someone like trying to like force probe your mind kind of thing, like that's how you resist is through willpower, so that would be under knowledge. So there are a
Sheer
few like
willpower alone.
yeah, so there are sometimes like some outliers like that skill doesn't seem like it should belong there, but like for the most part it sounds what it looks like on the label kind of thing. So
Yeah. And this is one of those games that has a lot of different skills.
Yes.
So we will not go into the exhaustive list of all the skills in this game, but
Right.
we've mentioned a couple like willpower, first aid.
Hmm.
There's droid repair,
Right. And there's also
astrogation.
like to keep going with the example, there's like first aid, then you can specialize into medicine or surgery and or like droid instead of just droid repair, you can specialize into droid building. I've had a character who like started off as a droid repair person and then like built like a B1 battle droid as like a support combat class, and then like kept finding bigger and kept finding. I kept throwing bigger and better robots at them. They kept harvesting them for parts, then making eventually a nightmare of an in-game boss, essentially that they could carry around with them. Which
Amazing.
I felt both proud because it's like, hey, look, they're actually doing a lot of stuff in downtime and like paying attention. So I'm like, I got to keep rewarding this person by letting them have this ungodly contraption they've made. But
Absolutely.
like I said earlier, there are so many skills you get into, so many specializations of those. It's definitely like what do you want to play instead of like there being classes, especially because what we'll get into next, I believe, is talking about character points and how you level up.
Yes,
Um,
now we're getting to character points if we can scoot past the wild die into the special statistics. This is kind of the other half of the meat and bones of Star Wars Re-Up. The first half of the meat and bones is rolling those, that dice pool of d6s. This is stuff that you can use to kind of alter the results potentially.
right. Character points serve two purposes. One, that's how you level up. After you complete a mission, you'll be rewarded like two, depending on how well you did, or like if there's like any really cool moments, perhaps there'll be if your GM is generous or not. Um, you'll get a few character points to level up. Um, the other purpose they serve is when this game was first made. There's a lot of debate about this. I'm not getting into this because I'm tired of it hearing about it about midichlorian. Like, um, I
Oh
believe
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
believe
yeah.
I believe there's a way we can coexist with the midichlorian debate. I'm a centrist on the midichlorians of like we can hold both these things in our hands and be okay and get along.
Both of these are
Yeah,
true.
yeah, we get these two can exist in the same plane. But when this game was made, it was not so much based on like your midichlorian count if you can do the force or not. It was um, are you trying to tap into the force? Like some people are more gifted than others, or start out more gifted, but anyone can draw on the force, and that's still true in the new canon as well. But like I said, we're not getting into that. But for this game purposes, character point character points, you always want to have. I would say 5 is my recommended for new players for a rainy day because if a roll goes really bad, let's say you have 60 in blaster and you're like, we got to save the hostage, but you roll all ones, you're gonna miss, and if depending on your GM, you may accidentally shoot the hostage, kind of thing as a failure, or like wound the hostage, and like that's never good.
Right.
For an
That's a
example,
pretty bad roll. So
yeah. So it's like total garbage rolls happen, unfortunately, um, and but what you can do with those character points is for every character point you spend, and you can do it one at a time. You don't have to like commit to an amount. You can roll another d6, and then like to try to bump that number up, kind of thing. So and like the game explains that as like even Han Solo can draw on the Force in minute ways.
yeah,
Um, so like I say, you roll really bad on a blaster that you feel like really needs to succeed, or you got to like hack into that bunker door. Maybe Han Solo could maybe he was out of character points by then, but maybe if he threw extra character points on top, it may have worked, or it wouldn't have failed
yeah.
as badly, kind of thing. So like they serve two purposes of leveling up, but also you need them to like sometimes survive. There have been times when I played where had I not spent character points, my character would have been like mauled to death by like a random wild beast, or
Oh no.
been spotted by the Imperials. Like you can that's kind of like these are your abilities to as a player help shape in a game mechanic way what the story is being told. Like
Yeah.
um,
And
So
I believe that they very generously let you add. You can spend a character point after you've seen the result of your roll. It's not like you have to
right,
declare
yes,
before you roll all of your dice. You can say, "Ooh, that was
I
five
believe
ones and a
yes,
three. Like,
I
let's
believe
add some dice to that."
in the game, I believe in the like game mechanics of it, the GM could be like, "You have failed miserably," and you'd be like, "Well, I might want to change that,"
Actually,
and then you can go in and change it. Yeah. So uh, like I said, always have a few of those as a rainy day, but you can't like hoard like 40 of them because then your character will not be properly balanced for the growing encounters and stuff. So like you also got to use so it's like a nice game mechanic for the players to be like, I need to have enough to influence the story and my character, but also I got to level up so I can just be
yeah, a little
better
bit of
on
resource
average. Yeah,
management in your Star Wars games.
I've had some people be like, I've had like in the pregame chat, like perusing people's character sheets, make sure everyone's good to go and updated. And I'm like, why do you have 40 character points? Please, for the love
Use
of God,
them.
level up. Let's use them right now. Let's level up. Come on, let's level up. Dodge, blaster, first aid. Always things you gotta try to get to 5D at the very least, just to survive, so we could tell the
Absolutely.
story. Um, but yeah, so that's how your character you can use the force in a small way. In a much bigger way, there's these things called force points.
Force points. And also, if Isaac doesn't want to get into the midichlorian debate here, that's fine. But I want to see it popping off in the comments. That's what I
Please
want.
no, I don't want to. I've stopped debating online on things like this, and I'm like, can we
Put
please?
all of your most controversial Star Wars opinions down there, and it'll be wonderful.
Um, so the force in this game about the force, force points. There's no limits to how many character points your character can have. I would encourage everyone to please level up your character and maybe hang on to like 2 to 5. No more than 10, please. Just level up your character. It's better to be good at something than have to like rely on the force to get you out of the trouble every time. But the force points is kind of like rewarding. It's kind of like inspiration in this game. It's awarded by the GM for like a heroic action. Sometimes I think the game manual encourages GMs like if someone like goes to unlock a door and the DC is like 20, they got to roll above the 20, but they roll a 40 somehow. Be like,
Cool.
okay, you're rewarded a force point, or like selfless heroic acts, the Jedi way essentially. Even if your character's not a Jedi, the base game assumes you're at least leaning neutral, leaning to good. There are other
Yes.
systems for like in there. People have made homebrew systems that are available online if you want to play Imperials or play Sith. But the base game assumes you're going to at least be Han Solo or better, essentially, as far as like
On a
moral
scale
alignment.
from Grand Moff
Han's,
Tarkin to Luke Skywalker,
yeah. Where do
who
you
are you?
got enough
Go.
in the chat? Where are you at? Um, but so a non-force user character can have up to 5 force points. A force user character, which I assume we'll get into that later.
Yes.
A force user character can have unlimited. But a non-force user like Han Solo can have up to 5 force points. A force point, especially for a non-force user, is um, before you go to, you're like, I want to do the thing, and the GM's like, this is a difficult thing, and you're like, well, time to bring out the big guns because, like, for example, we'll go back to the perfect example is that episode 4 when Luke Skywalker's in the trench, and Obi-Wan Kenobi urges him to use the Force. He does so. He would be rolling missile launcher. I believe that would be under mechanical. We'll say he has 5D in it plus targeting computer, which was giving a +1, but he turned it off, so it's just a 5D because he was blasting Womp Rats like back home in Beggar's Canyon. So we'll say he's 5D in that. So he was going to roll 5D, but the exhaust port's very small, but was purposely put there, as we talked about from Rogue One in the pre-chat. Um, um, so that's a very difficult shot. and the GM be like, "This is very difficult." He might even tell you that it's a very difficult on a scale of difficulties. If something's like 1 to 5 difficulty, that's very easy. Probably don't even need to roll for that. That was like, okay, yeah, that you're walking down the street. That's a difficulty of 1. Just yeah. Um,
Just don't trip.
right. This could be something very difficult, which is a 21 to 30 difficulty like a difficulty thing. So Luke Skywalker would declare he's using a force point before he rolls, and then instead of rolling 5D, he would roll 10D.
Yeah, that's
So it
right. The
it
dice
doubles
is
whatever it is.
doubled.
For very clutch things like blowing up the Death Star before the rebels are destroyed. Um, I would even argue falling Luke Skywalker Episode 5, falling to his death, but not, is like an acrobatic check, maybe with a force point, or maybe a little nothing. There's nothing wrong with a little railroading as far as a GM every now and then. Maybe that's more or less what that is,
Every now and
but
again, yeah.
every now and again. But yeah, so a force point doubles the dice. However, whatever that is doubled. And like same rules apply. If you roll a 6 in the wild die, you keep rolling that. But you cannot
Ooh,
add character
yeah.
points to the force points as rules as written. So you get to roll double, but you can't add anything to it unless the wild dice goes crazy. Um, so like those are used for like very important moments. Sometimes you're as a GM you're allowed to like if you use the force in such a way that's very selfless, sometimes you'll be like you get that force point back or whatever. But usually it's like that's how you can like track inspiration kind of things like instead of giving someone inspiration you give them a force point if they're like being a force of good in the galaxy kind of thing.
Yeah, being extra
Um,
good.
right.
So again, this game wants you to be good. We also
Right.
on this slide are a brief mention of dark side points, which we'll get into a little bit later. Getting dark side points is bad, and you don't want them.
Right. Rules
Is
as
the gist of
written.
it.
Yeah, rules as written. If you get 6 dark side points, your character becomes an NPC, and the GM can use them in their campaign to be like a lower tier bad guy or become the big bad guy, depending on the GM's discretion. Or it could just be they leave, kind of thing. They go and do their own thing, and they'll be a problem in
Off
season 2 or
doing evil
something.
somewhere.
Yeah. Uh, dark side points can have been awarded. I was in a game and we got double crossed by who we thought was a rebel was actually Imperial spy. In the like in the quickness of like he was down but not killed. Before my friends ran off and I was like, well, I'm finishing this guy off. And he's like, well, you're gonna be killing an unarmed man. That'll be a dark side point. I'm like, I'll take it. So that's another thing about dark
Ooh,
side points. It was a very big betrayal at the time,
yeah.
but I feel it well worth it and in character. But rules as written, the DM's supposed to like warn the player about this will be a dark side point, and then the player would be like, okay, I'm doing it anyway, or no, I'm not.
Yeah.
You can remove dark side points, but that's very difficult and requires like some role play slash not doing bad and being better like doing better like
Yeah.
it's a long process so you can heal dark side points but also in a pinch rules as written you can call out to if you have no force points and you need one you can call out to the dark side usually if you're a
Ooh.
force user to gain that double but that's definitely a dark side point and then it's like much easier to get dark side because the lure of the dark side draws you in so
Ooh,
uh
yes.
very dangerous. But okay, so we talked about how there's a bajillion skills and specializations. There is I believe it's there's some in like the main guide of like the the one that came out in 2015, the latest PDF guide is like 300 pages. There's some force points in there. There's another PDF by itself that's just like 80 pages of different force powers, and then
Oh my gosh.
they're
Yeah.
broken into yeah. There's an insane
In
amount. They're broken into control, sense, and alter is like the main three, and then there's combinations of the two. and the 3. There's so much, and then
Yes.
there's also like dark side powers too. There's so many
Yeah, the
powers.
nice thing about the PDF of just like the basic stuff is it's just control, sense, and alter, and then it kind of, control is controlling your own body, sense
Right.
is, extending your senses using the force, and alter is, doing all of the cool moving stuff with your mind
Right.
stuff
It's
that,
definitely like
Jedi are
a
known for.
yeah. It's definitely a like a thought puzzle for me every time. It's like the player's like, "Oh, I would like to do
Which would it
this," and I'm
be?
like, "Okay, control is controlling your body. Sense is sensing. Alter is external. Is basically so like control to do force speed, alter force push, seeing what's in the next, sensing what's reaching out with your feelings, sensing what's in the next room. That's sense. So like sense is easy, but it's like a word puzzle, like a word. I have like a sentence or two to like remind myself what they are.
Yeah, I
Uh,
can imagine it gets a little tricky with the sheer amount of things a Jedi or Force
yeah.
user can do with the Force.
Um, Starting out as a character creation, you can do sorry, leveling up these force powers is like the attribute is like leveling up your skills or attributes. Control is like strength. It's the overarching thing, and then you can specialize in like force push for alter. Like so, your alter can be like your strength can be 2D, but your punching, your brawling can be 4D. That means you put points into it. It's like you're not naturally strong, but you've gotten really good at punching. And like alter could be 1D, but your force push can be 5D because you really focused on learning that power. So there's that
Just
as
doing
well.
Force push ups all day. Yeah.
Yeah, just doing that all day.
Well, we've hinted a little bit at what sort of characters you might play in this game and character creation in general. So I think after the break is the perfect time to get into actually how to make a character for Star Wars Re Up. So you have that to look forward to, audience. We will be back shortly. Hello and welcome back to Rough Start. We hope you had a very nice little break. Joining me tonight is Isaac Bates, and we are running through the Star Wars D6 RPG, originally all the way back from the 80s, now published by fans and lovers of the games. Previously, we talked about rolling the dice pool in this game, the dice pool of D6s, your attributes, your skills, the wild die, which adds a little bit of unpredictability, character points, force points, and the force in general, because you can't have a Star Wars game without the force. And now we are going to be talking about characters, the people who will actually inhabit the world, the galaxy. Um, yeah, so characters in this game, there are no classes, like Isaac said, but there are some pre made templates that you can choose from. These templates come with attributes already. You don't have to decide where your dice in each attribute are going. And then you pick the skills from the list of skills on the template. So the example we have up here is the Laconic Scout. And you can see they have all of their attributes and they've picked out skills, and helpfully some of the templates also have personality traits, potential personality traits. All of that is always free to be changed. um, you can also make your own template if you like things to be a little bit more difficult, which apparently I do because I made my own template for the character I'm playing in the game that Isaac is going to be running, potentially, hopefully soon,
Yes.
and
Well, like
to be
you,
shown here on the
yeah,
YouTube channel.
you've made too much. I've fallen in love with your character too much to not run a game. So like, there will
I'm
be a
really
game that
excited.
we run. It just matters if it matters who's in your party. That's all that matters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So but yeah,
exactly.
we should be getting that going up soon anyway. Um,
Yes.
well, this is actually, I think, a good, if there's a character sheet up there.
Yep.
Um, I can't read the exact numbers, but that doesn't really matter because on there you can see that over our attribute, like we'll go with dexterity, is a number, and below that are skills of numbers of different numbers. So this is a great thing we should have probably said earlier. Actually, is like uh, and the different attributes like dexterity, strength, knowledge, perception, technical and mechanical, those are your attributes. If you don't have skill points in something, you roll that attribute. Like if you didn't, for some reason, like, okay, if you didn't have pilot starship to fly an X-wing, you would probably roll, I believe it's mechanical. So whatever your mechanical is. If you want to put points into fly a pilot starship, then you could, like, if your mechanical is 2D plus 2, we'll call it, you can eventually have 5D plus 2. So like mechanical wise, you're pretty average, but you put a lot of time learning or experience in flying like an X-wing per se, which would be Starship. Or you could be uh, you could be a Jawa with 1D strength. That's your attribute, and you can put a whole bunch of points and to make it 6D brawling. So you could be a Kung Fu Jawa, but
Hell yeah.
you weren't like born really strong. Like a Wookiee, I believe, would be like easier to be start out as a very strong character with strength, but maybe their dexterity isn't as high, whereas the Java's dexterity would be high. But so whatever if you don't have a specific skill of something, you'll roll the umbrella attribute, and then as you level up, you can be better specific at things. And then we talked about earlier how there are specializations, so you can be like really good at first aid and become like either officially or unofficially a medical doctor kind of skill of healing, which is always good in the downtime. But yeah, so there are definitely, especially in that free PDF of the fans have made, there are plenty of like archetypes. But as far as like really the sky's the limit, it's like think about who you want to be in any Star Wars media, and then like what are they good at,
Yeah.
what are they not good at, and you will feel like, at least my experience or most players I've played with, you will feel like useless at first in the first game, but that's okay because like you're supposed to start out small and eventually steamroll into an unstoppable uh like hero squad essentially. So
Yeah.
like even like Luke Skywalker couldn't do it all in the first episode, but by the sixth episode he could do quite a lot. So and there's
And that's character
countless
growth.
that there's count like even the Mandalorian season one made mistakes, got a few ones in the Wild Eye, got a few sixes in the Wild Eye, but then like by season three, it's a well-oiled machine of just destruction. So
Absolutely.
um,
Yeah.
plenty of
And
any and all examples throughout Star Wars media and history.
yeah, and those picking those skills, even though it's on a template, is really where you get to customize your character and make it
Mhm.
what you envision. You've got 7 dice to spend on those skills. You can add 1 or 2 of those dice to any skill that's shown on your template. Um, you can also give your character disadvantages to gain more dice to spend on skills. So,
Mhm.
like for example, the character that I have made, without any spoilers, has an enemy, and that means that it's a downside that there's some we don't like each other very much, but also I
Right.
get to have an extra die to put where I want
Yeah.
it,
So
which was very helpful.
you get to be a little bit better at something, but you also kind of hand the GM a loaded gun of this
Yeah,
guy wants to destroy me and
yeah,
hates
and if
me, and then
If
so
there's one thing about me that you need to know is that I love handing my GM a loaded gun and going,
I
use
I
this.
I always try to respect when a player hands me a loaded gun and be like, I will have to shoot you with this, but I will try to do it in the coolest way, in a way that's
Well,
fun
that
for
will be a dark
everybody.
side point as well,
Yes,
so.
exactly. So you get, I believe, 7D to spend on like attributes of like making those umbrellas. And as they're more expensive and take longer to do, but you can level up those base attributes as well as the skills.
Mhm.
So once you start playing, it's just a matter of where do you want to go. I've had most players be like, "Wow, that mission was a lot of social stealth. I need to up my persuasion or my diplomacy or my intimidation, or that was a combat heavy one. We need to buy better armor, better weapons, and be very good at dodging and blaster." So like as you run into problems, and those kind of things, you'll know what to level up next time. Or if you have an idea of what you want your character to do or where the campaign's going and missions, you'll kind of know in between missions of like I need to level this up or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you have I believe it's rules is written 7D as attributes, and depending on what races you pick, um, there are limits. Like a Jawa can't be more than 2D plus 2 in strength because this stature wise they are limited. But like a Wookiee, I don't believe can be lower than 3D in strength.
Yeah.
So like
The
there
different
are
species
yeah.
have different, amounts that are given. Most of the templates are human. Most of the
Yes.
characters in the Star Wars films are human, so that kind of tracks.
Hmm.
Um, I
There
will say
yeah.
my one gripe with some of these templates is there's ones like on one hand we have ones that are like arrogant noble, brash
Right.
pilot, old senatorial, and then you just have Wookiee, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, what?
Well,
Give
I
me an
understand.
adjective with that too,
Right.
man.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
honor bound
Angry
Wookiee or
Wookiee.
something. Like
Old Wookiee.
old Wookiee. Yeah, let me play an old Wookiee. But yeah.
Wookiee, comma the hairy ones. Um, there are in uh like with just like in 5e there are some like bonuses like elves and half elves have dark vision. There are similar things to like some alien species have like situational bonuses to like hearing or sight or senses that could come up that could be like the DM might give you an extra dice or lower the DC for your character specifically, that kind of thing.
Right.
um so you can get like I think there's also a way to create your own species if you really want to get that. If you like, if making a template isn't enough, you can make your own species. I had a person do that, and that was a lot of fun working with them on that.
Yeah, I mean the
Um,
galaxy is vast. There's a
it's
lot of
very
aliens
large.
out there that aren't featured in the movies or
Yeah,
even
and like
books, comics, etc.
lore wise, there's a lot of the galaxy unexplored because it's very dangerous to do that, which is a great idea for a campaign setting, of like just
Ooh.
exploring new world. Like you get kind of Star Trek with it, of going boldly beyond. Um, but yeah, so like if you have a template of mind or a character that you know in Star Wars media, you could like kind of base your character around that, and then you have I believe 10D you can split to like of your base skills of like level 1 character, and based on your campaign or your GM, he might give you more, they might give you more, like if you want to start kind of like, instead of like the difference of being like starting a campaign at level 1 or level 3, that kind of thing. And like you said, you can take advantages or disadvantages to like you lose dice to give, to be like, oh, I'm super rich already, or I have a mortal enemy trying to kill me, and you get a little dice for that for your trouble. Um, so that's basically it. As far as making a character, you have like,
Yeah,
and you can
it's
also split those dice. Like you can take 1D and break it into little. I think they're called pips. That's the plus
yeah, they
one
call
plus
them
two thing.
pips.
Yeah. So you can break a dice into 3 pips and spin
Get a
those
little bit
around to
more
be
use out of it that way.
right. Yeah. Um, and there's a lot of advantages, disadvantages that are fun, flavorful, and like I said, adds story hooks. And I know one of them is like in debt to a crime lord, kind of like Han Solo
Yeah.
is in Episode 4, where it's like you got to pay back this money, and bounty hunters might be sent after you, but you might get swept up in the rebellion and like kind of forget that, but then you got to pay it anyway, kind of thing.
Suddenly it comes back to bite you in the
Yeah,
ass and you've been
yeah,
trapped in carbonite. Yeah.
exactly. So there are lots of ways to, like I said, instead of like character puzzle pieces where a druid can only look so many different ways, or a sorcerer, that kind of thing, or a fighter, think of this character building system and leveling up system as like you're kind of like putty. You can change it, and you can also like, actually, I don't want to focus on leveling up this anymore. I want to do this instead. I want to learn this completely new skill that I want to do. So like, it's very uh, it's very adaptable, leveling up system and character
Yes.
building system, I believe.
We've
So
uh, we've talked about Call of Cthulhu on the channel before, and
mhm.
Call of Cthulhu has a very similar system where
Yes,
if you want to get good at a
uh,
skill, you practice that skill. It's not like you're leveling up your whole character.
right,
Um,
definitely.
yeah.
Um, so the other like important thing is deciding in character creation, is your character force sensitive. Now up to the GM if later you can like change that. Um, that's up to them. But if you start out force sensitive, you lose, to kind of balance that. You lose a few starting character points as far as like what your base skills are, to take points into like to the force as well. Um, so and then like you got to worry about leveling those up as well. That's to
Hmm.
balance out like, because like if you it'd be wild if your GM lets you start off with a lightsaber, let alone like a whole bunch of force powers. I always make my characters work for the lightsaber. I give it to them
You
early on, but
gotta.
they don't start off level 1. Like I guess the whole thing. They can have some parts for it or it's broken, but like or maybe it gets taken away from the first after the first mission, but like
Yeah, like a
that, yeah.
Castlevania Symphony of the Night situation.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
But like take it from me as a GM tip.
the lightsaber.
It
We gotta wait for the lightsaber.
You gotta wait for the lightsaber. It's once they realize the Excalibur power that it actually is, it it's gonna make it's gonna make it's gonna make it difficult, because well, like in the prequels, they whip out the lightsabers and then suddenly, oh, we escaped the planet. Like
Yeah,
um
we did
it's
it.
all the lightsaber solves a lot of problems, combat and social. So or even trap based, because they can start cutting through the walls. So like um you want to make them like chase after that as well. So like but yeah, after you decide if you're force sensitive or not, you just there is again a lot of options in the PDF, and there are like PDFs of just equipment, not even weapons, just equipment and then starships, and then droids, and stats on like building droids,
I'm
upgrading droids,
still looking
crafting.
through the equipment lists,
It's a
looking for
lot.
stuff.
Um, so you can like spend credits. Maybe your GM gives you like extra credits. Um, Pro tip for a new player: loot the first stormtrooper you get because they drop. They should be carrying around E11 blasters. Those are some of the best easily obtained blasters. They are really good at
Ooh, let me
all
just
right.
take
Yeah,
notes real quick. Hold
all
on.
all ranges. They usually have like a retractable stock and a scope. They do 5D damage, which is why it don't get shot by stormtroopers because they're dealing out a lot of damage at first. Um, but yeah, so like buying weapon, there's a plethora. There's blaster pistols, hunting blasters. There's the gun from the Mandalorian,
Bowcasters. There's a
bowcasters.
bunch of stuff.
There's the disruptor from the Mandalorian that turns Jawas into like it just like that disintegrates them. They have those. There's stats for those. There's anything. There's flintlock pistols if you need them. There's anything. So, pro tip: a blaster can't be silenced usually, but a slug thrower or a gun can. So, like, it won't be as effective against armored opponents. But if you need a silencer, a silence weapon, then you can go slug thrower.
There you go.
There's synth rope. There's like little hacking aids to give you like a plus like a 2D bonus on like a one-time hacking thing. Um, there's personal computers and little drones even like so you can like get really crafty of like flying a drone around the city looking for stuff. There's anything and everything. The sky's the limit. As expansive and limitless are the skills and combinations. There's also that in equipment as well.
Yeah.
So it's
Oof.
it's it's literally what do you want to be? Go chase that kind of thing.
So much choice.
Um,
So many options.
Picking a name, I use a fantasy name generator, Star Wars thing on there,
Hell yeah. I
or
mean, the weirder
yeah,
the better. Like
oh
people
yeah, yeah,
were all about making those glup shido jokes last year,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I agree. I think your Star Wars name should be stupid as hell.
yeah. Um, Background is something like if you have an idea for a character, you probably already have an idea what the background is. If you don't, you can look at what your base skills are and kind of like, well, what was my character doing beforehand?
And that's where the
Objectives,
template
yeah,
really helps out as well. If you're like,
right,
if you have a vague idea of what you want to do, and then you can
right. If
say,
you
oh, well, I want to be a retired captain. And that gives you information about your background already because you're a retired captain. That sounds like a
Yeah,
background to me.
as most things take place in the Rebellion era, like maybe even before Episode 4, a common starter out one is young Jedi Padawan who survived Order 66 but hasn't really had a lot of training. So you're like, maybe you're looking for a master or holocrons. If you're a Wookiee, you want to go do some Wookiee stuff. That's your background.
I'm always
Um,
looking to do Wookiee stuff, man.
Always down, yeah. Let's see. Objective, yeah. So objectives are like, what is your character looking for? It can be like another thing is like, as you are like your neutral scoundrels or better, usually in this game, unless you're doing like homebrew rules of like we're actually bad guys, which is also fine. But those are different rules because then it's like, are you awarded like light side points for being good and you don't want to be good, that kind of thing. Um, you want to be neutral scoundrel, kind-hearted scoundrel scum or better. Um, what is your objective? Are you already a rebel already? Are you looking to join the rebels? Are you seeking the rebels for help? Are you just running from the empire? Are you an
Yeah,
imperial
do you just want, are
enemy?
you even a
That kind
rebel
of
at
thing.
all? Do you just want revenge?
Right.
Like, there are
That's kind of like
infinite choices.
why is your group together? Why are they meeting together? Why are they working together? Do they know each other? Is like maybe one of the new characters a rebel contact and you're looking for a rebel contact, that kind of thing. Objectives are a
Yeah.
great way for you and the GM to like group like overarching group goals for like the games or like even like personal objectives. Like if you're a Mandalorian, maybe you're trying to earn money for your if you're a child of the watch, then maybe you're looking money for your convert, or if you're a normal Mandalorian, maybe you're just trying to get better money and weapons to get better. It can be as big or as small as you want. Connection with other characters, and with all that, and meeting at a cantina for the first time, I believe you're ready to go.
Yeah, I really enjoy how simple and straightforward character creation is in this game, and I do like that they, mention like you should know the other player characters, like
Right.
what's your connection to them. I think it's a really straightforward thing to do, and the template makes
Mhm.
it even easier. But again, you can build your own if you want. It's not too much more difficult. It took me a little bit
Right.
longer than other people to do it, but I definitely recommend checking out the templates or
Mhm.
making one yourself. It's fun.
Definitely. And like a cursory Google, you will find a whole bunch of like, here's my character I made, and like there's a whole lot of resources out there. Almost to the point where it's like I almost encourage people not to go outside the main PDF file because it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot in there, and like once you get your feet ground on the ground and you kind of understand a little bit more about the system, then go explore all those other PDFs because like it's a blessing. There's a lot, but also it can feel like you could drown in it as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. The tyranny
yeah,
of choice, as I like to say.
right, exactly. All right. Well, I think the next thing is
Ooh.
combat, probably.
Yes, it is. It's
Um,
combat.
yes. Quick thing about combat is initiative. We talked about how your perception attribute is what you roll for initiative. So you have 3D plus 2 in your attribute. That's what you roll for initiative when it's called for. Some people do the initiative order, like just like in 5e. That's fine. Um, that works well. But rules as written is everyone rolls bad guys as well. Usually the players will win the perception roll because usually at least one person has really high perception, and most bad guys, unless you're going against like an inquisitor or a named imperial officer who's a bad guy, um, they will have trash perception, quite honestly, um, like as the base stats are given to us. Um, so you roll, and then the winner of the player gets to choose, not the party. They can that person gets to choose whether they listen or not. Um, do you act or react? If you act, you go first, and then the enemies react to you. But if you choose to react, you get to see what the enemy is doing, and then they still go first, but you get to know what they're doing and then react to it.
Right.
Most of the time, I get people saying, "We'll act first because if we kill them, they don't get to act." I'm like, that is true.
I mean, that's a very
But
solid plan.
yeah,
The best status condition is dead in most
yes,
RPGs, if you're fighting people at least.
like there are some advantages to reacting, like you are just trying to get away, not fight. So you can
Hmm.
know, okay, I'm being shot at because the GM will have to be like, these two stormtroopers are shooting at so and so. And the so and so will be like, okay, I'm taking cover this turn. Everyone else can run because they're shooting at me. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, or so like there's some tactics to be used there and like deciding what to do. Um, Combat is, as stated before, very dangerous. Please do not get
Yeah.
shot.
Gone are the
Uh,
days of the stormtroopers who will miss.
right. Ideally, they still will, but that's because you're using dodge and tactics, not memes. Like the meme
Yes.
stormtrooper is dead, but please take cover.
Taking
All
cover,
be
dodging. Yeah.
be responsible. You have energy dampening armor on at all times. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
this is a
yeah,
surprisingly deadly game for like when I think of
yes,
Star Wars, I think about like heroic action. Like unlike, Han Solo and Luke Skywalker, you don't have plot armor as a player
right.
character, so you
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 will.
could
I
get
like to
really
think of it.
hurt.
Um, in Rogue One, there's a lot of background battles and background characters they like get one-shotted. You start the game off as those guys. You will eventually graduate to Han Solo and Luke Skywalker tier, where maybe you do have a little plot armor, or maybe you do have like really good dodge, or you always go first and you kill the stormtroopers before they can actually get a good shot off.
Right.
But you will always start off with your background. You may not matter yet in the grand scheme of things. You got to survive until you do, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Well,
each
beyond it,
round, yeah,
oop, sorry, go
go
ahead.
for
I
it.
think we were just about to say the same thing.
Oh,
Each
sure,
round takes about 5 seconds of in-game time.
sure. Uh,
Uh,
yeah. Um, it's very fast paced. I would say it's a more fast paced than your average D&D round. Um, I think in the rule book it says like each round is like about 2 seconds even. So like you don't necessarily get your 30 feet of movement, action, bonus action, and reaction. It's like you can spend your whole turn sprinting like 10 yards and then but like not doing any actions or
yeah,
lining up a shot and then
I believe when I was reading the rules, it sounded like a character could only do one action in a round.
sure.
And if they want to do more, they can, but it comes at the cost of minus a die to
Sure.
every skill roll, I
Yeah.
believe,
A
not
good
just the
example of
second skill
that
roll.
is like shooting twice. You can shoot more than once. Like that might be that's determined by the fire rate of your weapon, but most can shoot more than once. If you have a blaster of 5D, that's really good. If you want to take two shots, you can do that, but that'll be 4D. You roll twice. If you want to like uh hack into a door while shooting, you would like if your blaster's 5D and your hacking's 4D, you would roll 4D for the blaster, 3D for the hacking. You can
Right.
do a lot of things, but limited by you will start rolling like garbage if you try to do too much. So, um, as far as like movement and action goes, in my Roll20 games, I have a rule where you can move 5 squares and no action, so about 25 feet, or you can move 2 squares about 10 feet and have an action. So like you can like do like
Gotcha.
position yourself around a barrel to shoot, and that's fine. But like moving 5 squares, that's like your person dead sprinting to wherever they're going
Yeah.
because it's like a couple of seconds.
Hustling versus taking a couple steps to duck behind
Right.
cover. That makes sense.
Pro gamer move: if you take no actions, dodge. If you're because in combat, if you take no actions, and even if you're cover, say you're dodging, because whatever the difficulty is to hit you, which we'll get to in a bit, I think, um,
Yep.
you like let's say you're hiding behind something, so it's like a difficulty of 20 to be shot, like wherever the enemy is. If you roll your dodge, which we'll call it 3D, let's say you didn't invest too heavily in it, but you should, and you rolled like a 15, then suddenly to hit you is 35, I believe my math is correct. So like you can only add yourself up. However, if you're shooting and dodging, suddenly whatever you roll as your dodge is your two hit DC. Everything else is minused off, and now you're establishing what your two hit DC, which can be good if you're really like high in your dodge. But if, like, say, you have 3D dodge and you roll an 11, suddenly you're very easy to hit, as
Yeah,
opposed
and I think
to
that's
adding on.
uh
Yeah.
the difference between using your dodge as a reaction, which I believe you can always do whenever someone tries to hit you, or using dodge as, like you said, your full action for your turn.
Right.
So reacting to dodging, and you can parry as well as a reaction.
Hmm.
You can use your lightsaber as a reaction as well.
Yes.
You can, I think, even you can like operate a vehicle as a reaction to try and get out of the way of an attack.
Right.
Um,
Sometimes like usually that's called by the GM where it's like the other speeders ramming into you, roll me roll me repulsor lift transport operation. They don't have the coolest names for these skills. They're very like um
Matter of
labely,
fact.
but yeah, very matter of fact. But that also helps not so you don't have too much confusion. Like roll me this to do this, and like if you did an action as well, like if you're shooting and driving, they might ask you to roll at a penalty as well as like how well are you reacting to this new things going on or whatever. Which that also gets
Right.
back to if you're worried about what the enemy might do, react instead of act in the initiative if you have the option. And then you can be like, well, I'll just like dodge completely. You can focus completely on dodging so you don't get hit. So they can't ram into you, that kind of thing.
There you go. There are benefits to going second
Right.
and going first, depending on the situation.
but it's also true they can't shoot you if they're dead. So, or incapacitated. So,
Yep,
um,
absolutely. We'll say that you try to dodge and the stormtrooper's blaster hits you. What happens then with injuries and armor?
all right. So, a good example of this is if there's really good there. Stunned is a that's the difference numbers. So like as previously stated, in E11 it does 5d damage. They're rolling 5d6s. That could I've seen that number sadly get up into the 50s on a crazy wild die that just keeps going and
Ooh.
won't stop. But like you're looking at like 20 to like 30 points of damage. Um, so if they're rolling 5d6 damage and your character's a Jawa with 1d6 strength, that means
You're in bad luck. That's it.
you have no if you have no armor on, you are rolling 1d6 and trying to beat 5d6. You're probably going to die, unfortunately. Even if you stack a bunch of character points on, you can't use a force point on HP, and I believe you can't even use character points on HP on these damage rolls as well. So that's
Hmm.
why it's really good to A, not be shot, B, kill things before they shoot you, and C, have good armor. Now, armor comes in a couple different varieties. Usually it's good at, there's physical damage and energy damage. Physical damage being getting stabbed or punched, or ballistic weapons such as slug throwers that shoot metal bullets. Um, or energy weapons, which are lightsabers and blasters. There are
Hmm.
some weapons that do a hybrid damage, like bowcasters, that technically are like partially physical damage and partially energy damage, but like how that's decided is up to the GM or like how that's rolled. But like armor does, like Stormtrooper armor provides, I believe like 3 or 4D physical protection. So like really good at like stopping a Vyro sword or a Wookiee punch potentially, but it only does like 2d plus 2, I believe, if I remember correctly, in energy dampening. But
Mm-hmm.
like if an average stormtrooper has like a strength of 2d, so they would roll combined what your armor is if you shoot them with a blaster. So that's 4d plus 2 in energy dampening. And if you picked up that E11, like I said earlier, you're only rolling 5d. So they might come out wounded or double wounded depending on what's going on. So yeah, as you can see, if you roll if energy, so you're soaking the energy, so you roll that 1d6, you roll 5, and they rolled 25. That's 20 damage you're dealing with. That's
That
over
would
the
be death.
16 plus. You are just dead. Um, Now, in this system, so like you can see, if you get shot but no damage, you'll probably still be stunned. Because like because unless you're rocking really intense armor or a mech suit even, um, you're probably going to like be stunned, and that's just a minus 1d to everything for one turn. If you don't get shot again, you're fine the next turn. It's just like the impact of the blaster bolt messing up your character a little bit, but not permanently. If you're wounded, you can be double wounded if you get wounded twice. If you're wounded, it's minus 1d till it's healed. Double wounded, minus 2d till you're healed. Incapacitated, you're knocked unconscious. Um, that is the result of most enemies will not outright be killed, but they'll be knocked unconscious. And even if they do get back up, they'll be wounded or double wounded. So massive penalty. And I mean, if you get double wounded in a fight, only the most loyal soldiers would be like, my job is to still keep fighting instead of I probably need to take cover
I'm getting
and
the hell
collect
out of here. Yeah.
myself. Maybe I'll call for backup. But like, mortally wounded is up to GM interpretation of are they unconscious or not. But mortally wounded, I think you start rolling dice with like, okay, you will be dead in X amount of minutes,
Ooh,
kind of
scary.
thing. Forever in combat, but like you need like it's like okay, we need to kill the bad guys and do first aid, or like start doing first aid now, or escape to first aid kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like I said, 16 plus is just guild. So uh, use cover, use smoke grenades, make
I know.
like
I'm scared for my precious little
anything.
character
Yeah,
now. I have to
yeah.
have to get
Please
him
use
better
cover.
armor.
Please
Uh,
find energy dampening armor. Unfortunately, so like armor will either be really good at physical, like a blast vest gives you like 1d a +2 to like physical, or like +2 to energy soaking. So like you roll your strength, add 2. It's not great. There's like a thing called energy dampening armor that gives you like a +2 to physical, so terrible at protecting you from being stabbed. But it gives you like a 2d almost in or 1d +2 in soaking energy.
right.
Um, there's unless there's a lot of homebrew items or GM given items, there's not too much in the way of vanilla armor to like protect. And then, like stormtrooper armor technically gives you -1 to blaster or dexterity skills because it's so bulky. Um, so like the bulky, the better the armor, the probably the heavier it is. Just as you don't start off a level 1 character with a lightsaber, I also advise GMs coding their friends and their players in just like full on pure Beskar, as seen in The Mandalorian. That will protect you. There are stats for that. That's late tier game.
For sure,
Um,
for sure.
so yeah, definitely take cover. Your strength is your constitution essentially in this game. That's your hit points. The higher your strength, the better. If you're wounded, if you have 3D and you're wounded, you also roll penalty dice on your strength. So the more wounded you are, the more like available to be wounded you are in the future. Um,
Yeah.
please, everyone needs to have at least 3D in first aid. It's easy to heal your friends, but there is a caveat in healing where like I think like if I remember correctly, it's like if you have a first aid, you just gotta roll a 10 or higher to heal a wound. And then you're back to full. You're back to normal. But if you get wounded again, now it's 15. It gets harder every time within that 24
It
hours.
stacks.
It's stacked to be very difficult to heal. So sometimes like don't heal me yet. Wait till I have a double wound or that kind of. So like there's pacing out of that, and there are like more advanced healing items. There's force heal. Um,
Yeah,
there's
I believe
like yeah,
first aid can revive an incapacitated character as
right.
well, so it's useful
Yeah,
for that.
it's easy to like stabilize as well. But it's just really hard to wound. And if it's happened to some of my players before, if you fail the first aid, the difficulty, you lose the first aid kit, and then two,
Oof.
the person isn't healed, and then three, um, the difficulty still stacks. So now it's 15 to fix that.
That's no
Uh,
bueno. That's
and then
unfortunate.
be careful and do not multitask in healing and shooting. Like
Yeah,
give that your full time.
absolutely.
Again, rounds are like 2 seconds. So
That's good advice in general for real life
yeah,
too. Focus on first aid. Uh, yeah, that's the basics of combat, um, and injuries and armor and death should it
yes,
happen to your character in this game. Unfortunately, um, I,
unfortunately,
I I want to like super briefly touch on like starship navigation and
sure, yeah.
starships in general. Um, if only to say that it exists in this game and you can do it.
Yeah. That scales up. Usually, if you have anything from a speeder bike all the way up to the Death Star, you will have like a character sheet for that vehicle. So like its hull is its strength. It has shields. It has like a weapon. It's like this blaster's 5D. A quick thing on that is there is scale in this game. So there's character scale, speeder, walker, starfighter, and capital ship. So a speeder bike can be anything from a swoop bike to even the land speeder Luke Skywalker goes with. Then there's the walker scale that covers ATST, the chicken walker, all the way up to the four-legged AT-AT. Um, walker scale. Then there's Starship, which is X-wing, Starfighter, Millennium Falcon. And then there's capital ship, which is anything from a Corellian corvette we see in episode 4 and Princess Leia ship escaping the Star Destroyer at the very beginning of the movie. Well, it
Mm-hmm,
doesn't
mm-hmm.
escape, but that
Tries
and
to
the
escape.
right that and the Star Destroyer that's chasing it are the same class of capital ship. So like the Corvette might have like 2D, um, and like a Star Destroyer will have like 60 in its damage, and even all the way, and then like there's Death Star scale for like space stations. But hopefully you do not have to fight the Death Star. That's ill-advised in general. But one thing, important thing is like that ATSD might say it has 4D, but your blaster says it has 5D. But the scale, if you get damaged by a Walker blaster, goes up, I believe, up to, because there's Walker, Speeder, Character, up 3D, so that's actually 7D.
Ooh, that's
And
hefty.
if you will die if you take a direct hit to the face. You will be unconscious and mortally wounded at the very at the best case scenario. Like so scale does matter, and then also like your blaster does less damage to an ATSD because it's armor. So like
Right.
because yours is character scale versus what its scale is. So there's also that to factor in. But uh all that stuff has its own like essentially character sheet or quick like almost like a spell card almost in some cases of like here's what it does. So but that most of that will be done by your character piloting
Gotcha.
kind of thing. And
Yeah, I
then
believe the
yeah,
relevant skills for spaceships, you've got your piloting skill. If you're going to be making like jumps into hyperspace, astrogation is
right.
important as a skill as well. Yeah, and there are whole rules on like ship to ship combat,
Hmm.
firing phasers in space. But I don't really know how that works. I
Sure.
will
And
admit.
usually it's done best with like especially for new players, put them in like find the Millennium Falcon for your group, and then everyone has like a job. Like one person's flying, a couple people are shooting, someone's making sure the shields stay on and get them back
Mhm.
up, and someone's furiously typing out the astrogation charts to like lead. Um, and like most things, if you're not in combat, these things can just happen without rolling. But that's where the danger comes in is when it is in combat, you got to make the roll. So it does sound difficult, but and it can be very difficult if everyone's in their own X-wing trying to like do it all by themselves with the R2
Right.
unit. But I find most success and most fun with maybe one person in X-wing if they really like that idea, then everybody else in like the equivalent of the Millennium Falcon that they will be flying in. So um, yeah, what else do we want to talk
Perfect.
about as we
Love
start
that.
heading out?
Yeah, I think we can round it off just talking a little bit about running the game. The PDF has a very expansive section on GMing and running the game. I just want to touch briefly on like how you pick the difficulty number, which is the target that
Sure.
the player is trying to hit on all those d6s.
Sure. So, I like anything will always have stats. You can always look at them. But for me, like I do my stuff mostly in Roll20 online. They have ways to make character sheets. I usually just use the macros of just rolling 1d6, 2d6, all the way up to 12 because um, once you as the GM, once you know like, okay, 5D is professionally trained, 5D is stormtrooper shooting. This guy is a drunk street thug, so he's probably going to roll 3D instead. Or this guy is a bounty hunter, maybe he's rolling 60. Or like it's a Sith Inquisitor, he probably is really good at this or that kind of thing. So difficulty numbers, like in that guide, it says very easy, 1 to 5, easy, 6 to 10, moderate, 11 to 15. As a game master, I like to have like these numbers like in my head or like even written out of like here's what easy looks like. Very easy, very difficult. Heroic is 31 plus, very difficult 21 to 30. Like we talked about that shooting the proton torpedo for Luke Skywalker into the Death Star, that was a very difficult or heroic difficulty. Um, they also have a system where like if Like for example, a moderate is 11-15, or if you don't want to like pick a number, you can roll 3 or 4 dice, and that's the difficulty. Sometimes you can do
Right.
that. As a GM, you can tell them the difficulty is this number, or I can't tell you the difficulty, but so you can like
It's a
play with
secret.
suspense that way. You get to choose on that. Um, the let's see here. How do I pick difficulty numbers? The yardstick for me, especially in combat, is 30 feet away in the open, no cover, with a blaster uh, carbine or rifle like the E11. It will be a 15 to hit the stormtrooper. So just roll a 15 or higher, and you hit the stormtrooper. If that storm, if or a stormtrooper to hit you, if you're in cover, like halfway, like you're leaning against the wall, or like maybe there's a crate halfway, then you can be like, okay, now it's a 20. But if like you're like fully in cover, like crouching behind the crate, now it's like a 25 or 30. So like I use that's my yardstick in my head is stormtroopers 30 feet away and no cover. That's a 15 to hit. What are the modifiers on top of that?
Gotcha.
And like I said, like a 5D is professionally trained that can scale to a lock. Is this a corporate office that's like very serious about their security? And that lock's probably a 5D difficulty, so that would be around like a 16 or 20. Is this like an easy storage essentially, where it's like it's probably just a normal padlock, so that'd probably be like a 10 or a 15 to like break in quietly and like really easy to smash it, that kind of thing. So
Okay, yeah,
um,
that makes sense.
I just keep that yardstick of 30 feet away, stormtrooper, no cover, 15 to hit. So like that as a yardstick. If I don't already have it pre-written out, what the difficulty is for the specific particular thing, um, I start doing my math from that point and then go from there.
Hell yeah, nice. Yeah, I think that's very helpful for people out there trying to run the game because for me, the difficulty number is always like, or the difficulty value, the target number, whatever you want to call it. It's always the most difficult thing for me as the GM that I struggle
Mhm.
with, where it's like, how difficult should this actually be?
Right, right.
Than
Um,
just pulling a number out of my butt and hoping it makes
and
sense.
yeah, and the friendly GM tip from just the GMs, use that you don't have to tell them the difficulty number, because there are some times where you're like, just roll, and sometimes like, yeah, that number feels right, and you can be like, yeah, that
Yeah,
succeeds. Like,
I do
that's
that as
okay.
well.
And to all the players watching, that happens. I'm sorry. It's like saying Santa Claus isn't real, but like that
Yeah.
happens all the
Don't
time.
listen, cover your ears,
Yeah,
players.
yeah.
This
Cover
is
your ears.
GM's talking now.
You can be like that number feels right, or like that number fails, or also like another tip is you don't nothing bad has to happen on the one on the wild die. You can save those up to yourself. Like after 3, reinforcements show up, or 3, then your blaster just stops working, like that kind of thing. Like you don't have to like
Yeah.
you can like it's almost scary to players if nothing bad immediately happens. You can like save those up, or
You're
just
like,
have
oh, what
nothing
is that?
happening and they're always looking around the corner, kind of thing. So,
Yeah, that's the part where you
um,
chuckle ominously and
like, oh
don't
yeah,
say
no, it's fine.
anything. Yeah.
Everything looks fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Um, but yeah, so you just like once you start learning those, like once you start have those in your head, you have those metrics of like 30 feet away, no cover, that's a 15. Once you start having those metrics in your head, you can be like, okay, this is this and this is that, or this is an easy roll, so just roll above a 10 or that kind of thing.
Right.
So it gets easier as you do it, and eventually you'll see things like Neo at the end of the Matrix, where it's like, oh, it all makes sense. I can just see the numbers. Like eventually you'll get there if you do it enough. So yeah.
Perfect. I love that. I think the last slide I have is just like the GM side of the dark side points, which we kind of already talked about, which is totally cool. I Something I want to point out with this, and the reason why I wanted to put it in is that um, like you mentioned, the GM has to warn the player that, hey, this is going to be a dark side point, this is going to be the consequence. And I'm just a big fan of reiterating out of character what the consequences are going to be because sometimes it's not always obvious that that will be a
Right.
consequence. And I just really appreciate that they took the time to say, you say this out of character to the person to make sure they actually want to do it or not.
Right. Now, I have had a group in the past where I gave them a lot of warning of like, okay, you guys are getting a little too rowdy. From this point on, I will not warn you about dark side points. They should be self-evident. I feel like they all agree they're self-evident. So I took those like you can so like if you want to add a little extra like ominousness, you can as a GM as a group decide together. Yes, let's take those training wheels off, those barriers off, and have no safety net. But it also does help the players understand what they're doing dark side wise. And I also feel like there's a sliding scale for what constitutes a dark side point. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
a Jedi youngling uh, robbing a store is different than a Jawa stealing something because like a Jawa is like as a species they're a little like always taking what's not theirs to begin with. I
Yeah,
wouldn't
but a
punish a
Jedi made
Jawa
an
for that.
oath.
But a Jawa, but a Jedi knows better. But a
Yeah,
Jawa, that's kind of being so like there is a sliding scale that's fun to play with that as well. But that is definitely by case basis kind of thing. But
absolutely.
it is a fun system to kind of like be like, no, you can't just blow up the orphanage to get at the bad guy. You have to like save the kid kind of. So like,
Ugh, you have to
yeah,
be a good person. Well,
yeah, you have to be like at least not actively bad. I think is what
yeah,
the game wants you to be. Like, at least don't be actively bad. At least blindly walk into doing good at the very least.
yeah. Perfect. I think that is just about going to wrap it up. Is there anything else you'd like to add about this game that is so very special to you? Anything about running it, playing it, whatever you want. The
Um,
floor is yours, Isaac.
I would suggest um, every first adventure you run, even if it's a one shot, it's cliche, but it does a lot of legwork for you. Start in a canteen. You can really get into the vibe of Star Wars just by introducing characters in the cantina vibe, the band playing, you get the music going. You can have like random NPCs comment or like cause trouble and let the players flex their muscles, that kind of thing. Um, it's always the trope in a tavern, but it works.
It
So
works. It works
I
so
feel like it
well,
really,
and I'm
especially,
tired of
yeah,
pretending it doesn't.
right. It works for a reason. Yeah, actually, I will get on this chat. I'm not going to talk about midichlorians. I'll get tavern and cantina. That's fine. Do it. I encourage it. That should be fine. There shouldn't be shame with that. It's a great place to start. It's a great way to ease into the hot tub of Star Wars. Just save yourself some trouble and go for it.
Perfect. Love that. All right. I think that is it for Star Wars Re Up. These rules are very easy to find online for free. And, deep down, I think that the Rebel Alliance would appreciate you not giving any money to the mouse. So it's kind of a win win situation. Let us know in the comments below one, your opinions on midichlorians, two, what your favorite Star Wars or space opera game is. There's a bunch out there, and a lot of them are really good. Um, Isaac, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Instagram at Legends and Lasers. It may not look active, but I do check the messages. I promise. You can also find me on the Rough Magic website. I currently offer Star Wars D6 campaigns custom for the players. A thing called Adventures in Middle Earth, which is a reskin of 5e. It's set in the Lord of the Rings.
Ooh,
Also now the official Terminator role-playing game is really fun. Time
hell
travel and
yeah.
fighting robots or trying to survive the future war, all good. And I hope to be like putting out also have a Camelot 5e game of just normal 5e, but in the theme of Camelot, which is really exciting. And hopefully be adding Blades in the Dark and Call of Cthulhu here in a few short months to my repertoire.
Fantastic.
So,
Two games we've talked about on the YouTube channel before.
and the Rough Magic has a Discord. You can also find me that way too. So,
Perfect. And once again, I am Charlotte. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is right here. You can also hopefully find both Isaac and myself playing this Star Wars campaign
Yeah,
sometime in the near future on this YouTube channel. Fingers crossed, if all goes
definitely.
well.
Yes. It will happen eventually. It's just a matter of when.
Yes. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you feel so moved. Once again, we are Rough Magic Games. Keep an eye out again for that future Star Wars campaign, and stay tuned for the next episode of Rough Start, where I will be talking about Vampire the Masquerade, a complete tonal shift. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
All right, that's all for now. Bye, folks.